Today we are working Psalm 40. Now, Psalm 40 is used for all kinds of gorgeous things, including finding faith in your magic and faith that in your future. But today I want to use Psalm number 40 to be delivered from a negative situation, to be actually delivered from a negative situation. So if you've got anything going on in your life and you don't know what to do about it, this psalm can help you find deliverance, meaning being picked up, taken out of that problem, and set in some much better place. And the way we work Psalm magic is very simple and very, very powerful. We take the psalm in question and we speak it out loud all the way through once without stopping. We call this an incantation. Then we go back through that same psalm and we consider each verse one by one in turn. And we dig and search for hidden occult meanings within the psalm. And then we apply what we find there to whatever the problem or situation that we've brought to the psalm. And it's through this process that in a very real sense, we are taking those magical seeds that we're finding and planting them deeply in the fertile grounds of our mind, where they take root and they grow, they blossom forth, and then they bear fruit after their kind. And that's exactly what we are going to do together right now, you and I, with Psalm number 40. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined unto me and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of an horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my goings. He hath put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Many shall see it and fear, and shall trust in the Lord. Blessed is that man that maketh the Lord his trust, and respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. Many, O Lord my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done, and thy thoughts which are to usward. They cannot be reckoned up in order unto thee. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered. Sacrifice and offering didst thou not desire, mine ears hast thou opened. Burnt offering and sin offering hast thou not required. Then said I, Lo, I come. In the volume of the book it is written of me. I delight to do thy will, O my God. Yea, thy law is within my heart. I have preached righteousness in the great congregation. Lo, I have not refrained my lips, O Lord, thou knowest. I have not hid thy righteousness within my heart. I have declared thy faithfulness and thy salvation. I have not concealed thy loving kindness and thy truth from the great congregation. Withhold not thy tender mercies from me, O Lord. Let thy loving kindness and thy truth continually preserve me. For innumerable evils have compassed me about. Mine iniquities have taken hold upon me, so that I am not able to look up. They are more than the hairs of mine head. Therefore my heart faileth me. Be pleased, O Lord, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. Let them be ashamed and confounded together that seek after my soul to destroy it. Let them be driven backward and put to shame that wish me evil. Let them be desolate for a reward of their shame, that say unto me, Aha, aha. Let all those that seek to rejoice and be glad in thee. Let such as love thy salvation say continually, The Lord be magnified. But I am poor and needy, yet the Lord thinketh upon me. Thou art my helper and my deliverer. Make no tarrying, O my God. It's interesting because this oftentimes is considered two psalms that were stuck together. It starts out with a psalm of gratitude, and then it has a psalm of supplication that's almost identical to Psalm number 70. And I have a feeling that there are some missing parts to this psalm that they never discovered. But it's a very, very powerful psalm nonetheless. So it starts out with, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. And the Lord here is tetragrammaton. Remember that tetragrammaton in the Old Testament can mean either the Lord of the Psalms as we think of the Lord of the Psalms in Magick, which is that there is one power, one source, and one substance. But in some of the stories of the Old Testament, the tetragrammaton is the demiurge who is disguising itself as the Tetragrammaton, who is calling itself the Tetragrammaton. And so sometimes when people read the Old Testament, they get confused and they don't understand that just because it's calling itself God doesn't mean that it is God in the Old Testament. So if God's being mean, it's not God. It's not God. It's a projection onto God. It's very, very important when you're reading the Old Testament to be very critical as to, well, what being is that's calling itself the Tetragrammaton? Anyway, so it's talking about the Lord here. It's talking about the Lord. Now, the Lord is the singular power, the singular source, the singular substance, the singular force in all the world, in all the universe. And there's only one. And since there is only one, there is nothing that can oppose it. And to wait patiently upon the Lord means that you're not going to be impatient. You're not going to say, well, I called on the Lord and I didn't get what I wanted, so I'll just do it myself. That's not wise, because what you do then is you are listening to that prompting of your ego mind instead of the prompting of your soul. The ego mind wants you to just say, well, we tried. No, you call upon this force and then you wait patiently. And waiting patiently in time sometimes means that it takes time to get your answer, but that doesn't mean that it's taking time in eternity. A lot of the reason why it takes time is not because the Lord has a problem reaching you or something, or that the Lord is somehow confined or is subject to time. It's that it takes sometimes that amount of time for us to really be open, to really relax and allow the healing to take place, because that force only wants our deliverance, only wants our good. It says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. So when you wait patiently, you always get your answer. He brought me up also out of an horrible pit, out of the miry clay. Now think about that. How many times in your life have things looked just so desolate and then they turned out okay? We want to remember times when we were delivered in the past from a problem. And it's through using that memory and allowing Spirit to use the memory on our behalf that we are guided and led in this particular situation as well. So the power of memory is an extremely powerful tool. So he brought me up also out of an horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock and established my goings. And the other way to use this is what you want now. So if you act as though it's already happened, you can put this whole operation into past tense, and that speeds up the experience, because it's a tool that we can use to convince our deep mind that it's already happened. If our deep mind is convinced that it's already happened, then it's no longer resisting it. And he hath put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Now, when God puts a new song of praise into your mouth, praise causes an expansion of your good. So not only are you being delivered from a negative situation, the good that you are experiencing in its place is ever expanding. Many shall see it and fear it and shall trust in the Lord. This is describing the fact that as things work out for you, it's not only good for you, it's good for everybody. As you allow infinite intelligence to work through you and deliver you from this problem, people are going to see it happen for you, even if they don't understand what's happening, even if you're kind of keeping it private. Everybody's going to get it. And so the fact that you're doing this for yourself is not just for you alone, it's for the entire universe. Blessed is that man that maketh the Lord his trust, and respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. So blessed is the man that maketh the Lord his trust. So you're looking to infinite intelligence, which has no opposite, to give you that which you need, rather than turning to things of this world, or turning to that ego part of your mind, which is pride and is lies. That ego mind is always going to lie to you, because the ego mind trusts in things which do not exist. The ego isn't real. The ego is a construct. It's a habit of thinking that we got into a long time ago. The Bible calls it a fall. It's not really a fall like you fell and bruised yourself. The fall is when we made up this idea that we're not at one with our Creator. We made up this idea, and a whole overlay of this world arose to support that idea, because that's how powerful we are. Our minds are. And so that part of the mind is proud and is a liar, but it doesn't know any better because it's just a machine. It's just a machine-like part of your mind that keeps you mired in this sort of matrix experience here. Many, O Lord my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done, and thy thoughts which are to usward. Okay, so the works that God does for you are many. And the reason why they are working on your behalf is because God always thinks of you. God never stops thinking of you. And God's thinking of you is God loves you. God thinks you're fabulous. God doesn't see you the way you see yourself. God doesn't see an ego. God doesn't see any of that. God only sees you as you were created. God created you perfect. How could God have made a mistake if God is all powerful and all perfection? God only sees you the way you really are, but God also gave you free will. So you are free to take as long as you want to see yourself the way God sees you. So God's thoughts are to you, and they cannot be reckoned up in order unto thee, if I would declare and speak of them. That means there are so many blessings that you have, you couldn't even think of them all. You can't even think of all of the blessings that you have. They are more than can be numbered. You can try to list all your blessings and really honestly list them all, but you couldn't. It would be impossible. But see, your ego doesn't want to think like that. Your ego doesn't want to think about all those blessings. Your ego just wants to think about this horrible situation and that there's no way out and that you're stuck. And it wants you to really believe that, right? So you're not thinking along the lines of the ego, which is what was described as the proud and turning aside to lies. You're going to think in terms of the way God thinks of you. And God thinks of you as being so filled with blessings that there are no way to number them all. Now it says, sacrifice and offering didst thou not desire. Sacrifice and offerings, if you think about those old burnt offerings, all cultures had burnt offerings because fire was considered the closest thing to God. And so when you burn things in the fire, you're saying thank you. You're saying thank you to God. That's the way that ancient fire ceremony in all cultures was. Now, the problem with the ancient fire ceremony is that the human beings that were sort of not so smart thought, well, if we're giving things to the fire as gratitude, and the more we praise and are grateful by giving things to the fire, then let's give other things we need. Let's give people. We need more people in the tribes. So let's give people to the fire. We need more livestock. Let's give animals to the fire, right? But what they didn't understand was that they weren't feeding just people and animals to the fire. They were feeding fear and pain and all of those things that come with animal and human sacrifice. All of these ancient cultures misused that fire ceremony, and it's describing that. And it's saying God didn't want that. Sacrifice and offering thou didst not desire. God doesn't accept pain and fear as a gift. Now it says, mine ears hast thou opened. Mine ears hast thou opened. Now in the Hebrew it says, you dug open my ears, like when you dug them open. So in other words, I'm so closed off to listening to your voice I'm asking you to help me. And the only way that you can help me is by digging open my ears. Burnt offerings and sin offerings hast thou not required. So it said that twice now. So opening my ears, I'm going to listen to your voice rather than allowing myself to think that the best thing that I can offer you is pain and fear and pain and fear and pain and fear. God doesn't want pain and fear from you. God wants you to listen. And if you listen, what you're going to hear is that God loves you. God thinks of you. God's already delivered you from this problem. It's already happened. It's not something that has to happen. But because you are so committed to what we were talking about earlier, we're committed to our pride and our lies, so we don't see that we've already been delivered from this problem. We are perpetually caught up in this cycle. So we're asking to be delivered from that cycle and to realize that we've already been delivered and the problem has already been solved. Then said I, lo, I come. In the volume of the book, it is written of me. Okay, so the book that is written of you is your entire soul. God wrote an entire book of you. and that's called your soul. And that book is continually being written, and it's eternal. I delight to do thy will, O my God. Yea, thy law is within my heart. So to do the will of God and the law of God is in your heart means that you were created as a soul, and as a soul, you already know what to do. You already know how to shine. You already know how to function. You already know how to be joyful. You already know how to be free from problems. You already know that. It's coded in you. The law in your heart and the will of God, they're like computer codes. And God already gave you those codes when you were created. They already are functioning perfectly. But we're living inside of another reality that's saying that's not working. And so that means that we're asleep to the fact that we are already free. We are already delivered. And that we are already functioning very, very highly and well as souls. But we're asleep to that, and we're making ourselves very, very upset, dreaming very horrible dreams. So we're sacrificing pain and fear instead of giving our gifts to God of gratitude. I have preached righteousness in the great congregation. Lo, I have not refrained my lips, O Lord, thou knowest. The congregation is the entirety of your thought processes inside your mind. So to preach righteousness in the great congregation means that you're taking time every single day to educate those ideas that it's infinite intelligence that you want to think about, not about your problems. You want to turn away from the thought of the problem, at least for a few minutes every day, and think about infinite intelligence instead. It's a type of pivoting that we do. I have not hid thy righteousness within my heart. I have declared thy faithfulness and thy salvation. So hiding the righteousness of God that is within your heart is anytime you deny yourself. You're hiding your righteousness. The seed of God is already in you, and you're already perfect just the way you are. There's nothing that you need to change about yourself. So the issue here is that the way we were created is perfect. We have nothing to change. We have nothing to alter. What we need to do is, instead of trying to change and alter ourselves, is we need to do less. We need to stop adding to ourselves. God created us perfect, just as we are, and that's the righteousness within our heart. I've declared thy faithfulness and thy salvation. So God's already faithful to you. God's already saved you. And because the reality is there's nothing for you to be saved from other than your idea that you're in trouble. I have not concealed thy loving kindness and thy truth from the great congregation. That's the trick right there. The great congregation is your mind. So instead of hiding the truth of who you are, hiding the truth of who you are as a soul from the rest of your mind, you need to allow that truth to shine forth, and those thoughts which are not of truth be shined away by the light of who you are. Withhold not thy tender mercies from me, O Lord. Let thy loving kindness and thy truth continually preserve me. So mercy and loving kindness are both keywords for sphere number 4 on the tree of life. Withhold not thy tender mercies from me, O Lord. Let thy loving kindness and thy truth continually preserve me. So this is just an affirmation that is already so. And if we think about it, if we focus our minds on those truths, then we accept that truth, and that truth reveals itself to us. So we're thinking in terms of loving kindness, truth, and mercy, rather than the problem that we are worried about. For innumerable evils have compassed me about. Mine iniquities have taken a hold upon me, so that I am not able to look up. So mine iniquities are listening to that ego mind. Mine iniquities are those lies that we talked about earlier, that arrogance that we talked about earlier. That causes innumerable evils. So there are the same many evils that can't be numbered as there are blessings. The evils are legion, is another way of saying that. Because of how creative we are, and because we are children of infinite intelligence, so we are gods ourselves, when we start creating evil, we create evil the same way that God creates good. So just like our blessings are not able to be numbered, so are the evils that we can create unable to be numbered. They are more than the hairs of mine head, therefore my heart faileth me. So again, this is so many things that we've done and thought about ourselves and thought about the world that are taking hold, that it seems like there's no way that we can overcome all of these problems, all of these evils. But you see, that is just the lie of the ego, because those things aren't really happening. They aren't really happening. They're happening in the realm of a dream, in the realm of a hallucination. Just because you can come up with an evil thought doesn't mean that you can make it so, because it's going against the will of the infinite. But because you are free to use your mind any way you want to, you can experience those things within the realm of a dream or nightmare. But that doesn't mean that they're really happening. So really all we have to do is switch and change it's saying in here, our focus from those evils that we're coming up with onto infinite intelligence itself. And then it says, "Be pleased, O Lord, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me." So God is always pleased to deliver you, and God doesn't have to hurry to help you because God already did it. "Let them be ashamed and confounded together that seek after my soul to destroy it." So those are those thought forms which we are discussing that are legion here. Those are ashamed and confounded because the shame in a psalm of those thought forms is a reminder after we're delivered from these things, not to go down those roads again when those temptations come up again. That's what the shame is all about. "Let them be driven backward and put to shame that wish me evil." Same thing. "Let them be desolate for a reward of their shame that say unto me, aha, aha." Now that's that tendency of your ego mind to use negative manifestations that it created to prove to you why nothing will ever work for you. It's a gaslighting that we do to ourselves. So the ego says, here's a problem. And God's like, well, there's not really a problem, but you're believing there's a problem. And then the ego says, yeah, but look at the problem. You see that problem? Oh, there's no God. There's no way out of this. You're doomed. And God's sitting there patiently, again, waiting for you to get to the realization that the ego is using as evidence, false evidence, to keep you stuck. It's showing you an illusion, and then it's saying, it's using the illusion to prove to you by saying, aha, aha. It's using the illusion to prove to you that the illusion is real. And God's saying, don't fall for it. "Let all those that seek rejoice and be glad in thee. Let such as love thy salvation say continually, the Lord be magnified." So it's giving you a very instantaneous way to stop that whole process of those legions of illusions and problems that we are coming up with. It's giving you an instant off switch. And that is rejoicing and being glad and loving the salvation that's already happened. And magnifying the Lord. Now you can't magnify the Lord. The Lord's already all, but you can magnify your experience of the Lord. And you magnify your experience of the Lord, it says, by rejoicing and being glad. It says, "But I am poor and needy, yet the Lord thinketh upon me." Now, poor and needy here is a positive thing. Poor and needy meaning I can't save myself because I'm so good because of the way God created me. I'm so good at these illusions that I can't get out of them. I've made a prison in my own mind of all of these problems, and I'm so good at doing that because of who I am that I don't know how to get out of it. But God does. And so that's poor and needy. Another way of looking at poor and needy is being like a little child. By being like a little child. I am the receiver, not the giver. In this particular relationship, God doesn't need us to give to God. We need to receive from God. And then we can give to God by following God's instructions, by following what God tells us to do. "Yet the Lord thinketh upon me." Isn't that nice to know? God never stops thinking about you. And do you know what God's thoughts are about you? God's thoughts about you are, you're amazing. I love you. You're perfect. Everything about you I love. I see that you're in distress, and I've already delivered you from that distress. You don't need to be in distress. That distress is not my will for you. Those are the kinds of thoughts that God has for you. Never does God judge against you. "Thou art my help and my deliverer. Make no tarrying, O my God." Well, God doesn't tarry. We tarry. We're the ones that delay. So that's a reminder to us not to delay in thinking of God instead of the problem. Because when we think of God instead of the problem, then we are immediately delivered from that problem. So whatever your problem is, you just keep coming back to the same psalm over and over again until you start to get a sense of peace and certainty that all is well. And once you get that sense of peace and certainty, then you know that the spell is cast and it's done and you don't need to cast anymore and you can move on to something else. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. Until next time, blessed be.